Today on Locked On Red Wings, is Detroit already cap-strapped?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. Scotty's also the host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And today's episode, guys, is going to be pretty straightforward for you. We want to talk about the Red Wings cap situation because there have been some rumblings online that Detroit has already found themselves in salary cap hell. And we'll address whether or not that is true for this year and the future. But before I can get to that, I got to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. They're already over, and the sports stop sporting, and we're in this all-star break with the baseball as well. Nothing going for the Tigers until Friday. But this summer, FanDuel still allows you to hook up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. Also want to thank you guys for making Locked On Red Wings your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Your team every day. Scotty, so just getting back to that prompt, right? The prompt for today's episode, whether or not the Red Wings are in quote-unquote cap hell. Do you think, looking at the Red Wings cap situation and where they are, who they have left to sign, are they going to be cap-strapped this season and for seasons to come already?
No. No, I do not. And obviously we talked a lot about this off air, and this has kind of been a discussion we've been having for a few months now. And even on here, right, on the show, we've been talking about the cap situation and the Red Wings outlook and, how, like when free agency started and the Wings got off to a, slow start, we'll call it, and didn't really get anybody on the, big day of free agency. Did that have to do with them being like cap strapped? And did that have to do with the fact that Seider and Raymond haven't signed an extension yet, and all of that? And all of those are factors for sure. But the one thing that Yzerman has made abundantly clear is he's not going to give out long-term contracts willy-nilly, right? That's not something that he is very fond of, I guess I'll put it that way. Somebody who certainly prefers giving out, 4 or less, 3 or fewer years in a contract. And so when we look ahead, which is what we'll do this episode, I mean, when we look ahead, there are multiple players of decent salary coming off the books each of the next 2 off seasons. And then the further you go, obviously, the more money comes off.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's start with this season, right? There are 2 big contracts and a couple smaller ones as well that are still left to be signed. The Red Wings, as it stands right now, have about $19 million in cap space. We all know, we've talked about it on end, Seider, Raymond are going to take up a huge chunk of that, and whatever's left is likely going to go to Jonathan Berggren and Joe Veleno. Good Lord. Jonathan Berggren and Joe Veleno, just the huge, biggest brain fart in the world. And so when it comes to projecting their salaries, we've talked about that a lot here on this podcast, and just a little bit of a refresher, Scotty and I are both of the mindset that we want to give those guys as long of a contract as we can right now. So in the NHL, you're an RFA until your contract expires when you're 27, or you've accumulated 7 NHL seasons. For both of these guys, they're going to hit the 7-season mark at or before they turn 27 years old. They've both got 3 full NHL seasons already underneath their belt. So for them both, you'd have to, if you want to make sure you don't go into those UFA years, you need to give them 2 3-year deals each for bridge deals. Scotty and I are of the mindset that doing that is gonna it might short-term give you more cap space, but at the end of those deals, in which they'd still be RFAs, if it's a 2 or 3 year deal, I think for Raymond, he's definitely going to hit 27 seasons before he hits 27 years old, because he just had his age 22 season. So he can go on a bridge deal of 3 years. And Seider, I believe, is, I think, max 3 years as well. You can correct me if I'm wrong, listeners, but I'm pretty sure the max bridge deal you can give them to maintain their UFA rights or RFA rights is 3 years. All you're doing is allowing them to get better in that span to have to pay them even more at the end of that. Now, that could work out in your favor in the capacity that you'll then be eating up a ton more UFA deals if you lock, or UFA years, if you lock them down to an 8-7 year deal at the end of that and more of their prime years, but you'll be paying them even more at that point. That's why Scotty and I are at this point in agreement that we want to give them max 6, 7, 8. 7, 8 would be preferred. I'm willing to go as low as 6 for both of them because you carry them through the rest of their RFA years. You eat as many UFA years as possible once they graduate that 7-year threshold, 7-season threshold. And as the cap goes up, whatever you're paying them now, which for Seider on an 8-year deal will probably be over $9 million, or 8.5 to 9.5 million, I would project. And for Raymond would probably be, 7.5 to 8.5, maybe even more as well. Those numbers, if they do continue to improve, will make that contract value look even better as this team is in that winning window, allowing them at the second half of those contracts to have the space to maneuver. Where if you put it off and bridge those guys, yes, you'll eat more UFA years at the second extension, but you'll be paying them substantially more as well, which could further your cap strap situation. So really, when it comes to Seider and Raymond, I really feel that for the sake of their cap in the long term, giving them as long of deals as possible now will only help in the future.
Yeah, I'd give them both 8. I wouldn't even question or consider we want to play it safe. You're actually not playing it safe by doing less than 8. You are actively screwing your cap of the future the more years you take off of that for a lot of the reasons that you just laid out, right? Like, yes, you are paying more in the RFA years. That is a huge trade-off that every single front office, this one included, should be willing to make. You overpay for the RFA so that you can get a discount during the UFA years. That means that to make it valuable, you have to eat, quote unquote, as many of the UFA years as possible. The most possible years you can hand out is what you should do. And the other big reason for that is the cap is going to go up multiple times, probably, in the over the span of the next 8 years. Right? I mean, we're even talking more than just like twice. Like it could go up who knows, 3, 4, 5 times over that span. So like there is no reason as to why the Wings, it is not in the Wings' best interest to give them 8 years. It absolutely is. It is more than in the Wings' best interest to give both of them as many years as possible because that is the best value. And as we're having, we're gonna zoom out a little bit and talk about the entire team's salary cap structure going forward. But that starts with these two, obviously, because they're going to take a big chunk of it. When if we were to have this conversation 4 years from now, right, we're going to go, wow, thank goodness we signed these two 4 years ago to this 8-year deal so that, their salary cap is this, because if they just did bridge deals for the next 3 years and then signed 4, 5, 6-year deals at that point, it would cost a lot more. It would be significantly more expensive AAV wise. It's a trade-off that every organization is willing to make with good members, like young players that are going to be here for a long time, that are part of their core. There is zero reason that they should not be trying to get as many years as possible, because it is going to significantly help your rolling cap and your cap structure down the road, and you always have to play that game. Even like the short term, we want to play it short and do deal to deal. Even that doesn't help you like that. Okay, like great. I don't know. I really don't see any reason as to why they shouldn't be getting as many years as possible from both of them.
Well, and the reason to give them a bridge deal one or both of them a shorter bridge deal, right, is so that on the short term, as you put it, they have more cap space to work with to make the team better in the short term, right? And then you also give yourself an opportunity, if you make it short enough that it doesn't enter into UFA years, to maintain team control and give them another longer extension, a more expensive extension, if they continue to get better. And that's the other thing, too, is if you give them a bridge deal and they get even better, that next extension is going to be even more. But it gives you a little bit more flexibility in the short term, but I'm not worried about that. Now let's zoom out a little bit, right? Or I guess zoom in a little bit. Giving them both 8-year deals, which is what we want to do because we just want to lock them down as long as possible because it'll make it look better in the long term. That will cause an issue this season with your cap. Not that it's going to make you go over the cap, but it will cause your cap, at least for this season, to be pretty close to the maximum. Right? You have about $19 million left in cap space.
Who else are we getting?
Precisely. It's not a problem. And also you have to remember too, you're probably, Berggren's going to be on the team. Edvinson's going to be on, a ELC still. So you're going to have young players likely on this team who Berggren's going to need a new deal. Valena's going to need a new deal, but I don't expect it to be that much. So I think this roster is pretty well set. And if you got to make a move at the deadline, if you're going to be a buyer at the deadline, I have faith that he's going to be able to pull something off. Hell, the freaking Vegas Golden Knights acquired Noah Hannafin when they were already at the cap because of the shenanigans that you can ensue. This season, I'm not worried about the cap. They'll be under the cap just barely, yes, but the rolling cap kicks in, as we like to say, next offseason, and then you'll be fine again. As soon as next offseason, the Red Wings are going to be okay again. And we'll talk about why that is in segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings. Got to talk to you guys today about Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is the matching and hiring platform with over 350 global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't help you hire faster. It doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality candidates compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's match engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Again, that is Indeed.com/lockedon right now. Term and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Indeed you do.
Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. We kind of talked in detail about why, obviously, the the Raymond and the Seider contract extensions are going to have a lot to do with how much cap space the Red Wings have this year and years going forward. But at the same time, we wanted to address a lot of the worries that people had about how this team, about people's worries about how this team's cap situation going forward, because some people are already talking about how the team is cap strapped or in cap hell. And that's just simply...
Did you hear that?
Okay? I just all of a sudden you looked like you got shot. Like, what happened there, buddy?
I just punted this table. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Hurt really bad. I'm just going to play it cool.
So, Scotty, well, you already have not played it cool, but
I don't hurt so bad. It's cool. It's fine.
This year coming up, this next offseason coming up, the Red Wings will have $18,227,083 coming off the cap with contracts expiring. Now, that is with the assumption that everybody walks away. So extensions notwithstanding. But I'm saying this to drive home the point that Yzerman has done a nice job of setting up the Detroit Red Wings to have money coming off the books every offseason, so he has the opportunity to thereby extend players or bring in new players to make the team better. Let me break it down for you guys, right? But let me break it down. Next offseason, you have Patrick Kane coming off the books. Now, that's a fan favorite. There's going to be a lot of fans who are already going to be clamoring for them to re-sign him when that contract's up. They're going to play it by ear because of obvious concerns, right? That's why they agreed on a $4 million deal with, 2.5 in bonuses, up to 2.5 in bonuses, whatever it was. That's something you got to keep in mind as well. If the Red Wings don't have that money to pay in bonuses this year, should he hit those performance bonuses, that applies to next year's cap. So up to $2 million will be applied to next year's cap, given how he performs and what the Red Wings cap situation has looked like after extensions. But you're going to have at least a minimum of $4 million coming off the books next offseason with Kane, another $1.125 in Christian Fischer, $800,000 in Tyler Mott. You're going to have $3 million in Oli Mata, $2.34375 in Jeff Petrie coming off the books, as well as William Lagesson, which I expect him to be in the minors, so he probably won't affect the cap anyways, as well as, and this is a big one, Ville Husso's $475 coming off the books as well. Once you add in Kailer Yamamoto's $533,000 buyout, the Red Wings will have over $18 million coming off the books. So when people say they're concerned about the salary cap issues with the Detroit Red Wings, there isn't one.
Correct. Yes. This is something. And then, I mean, if you want to, we can even look further down the road, like the year after that. Then you have Ben Sherratt coming off the books. The year after that one, you have Andrew Kopp. And those are one player, but that's one example in each of those years. You have a rolling situation where they are going to have multiple players coming off of the books, and again, decently sizable contracts if you look at those two, freeing up room. This is such a non-issue as it stands right now, and obviously a few bad decisions can lead to it being an issue, right? It's not saying that they're just invincible to it. Every team has the potential to run into that situation, but where the Red Wings sit right now, there is no reason to have serious, sirens rolling, cause for concern for the salary cap in this season or next season. They're fine. And that is why Yzerman does not like giving up a lot of years, and that's why they were quiet in day one of free agency, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm glad you said the next offseason as well, because let me break it down for you. The season after that, they're going to have over $19 million coming off the books. Those names being Vladimir Tarasenko's $4.75. You're going to have Ben Sherratt's $4.75. Justin Hole's $3.4, another big one that Red Wings fans want to get rid of. Eric Gustafsson's $2 million. And then you'll have Cam Talbot having expired at $2.5 million as well. So there is not such a non-issue right now with the way that Steve Yzerman has addressed and handled the cap, that every year, this is why he wants to give midterm contracts. This is why he avoided giving 6 and 7 year contracts out in the free agency. As much as we give Yzerman crap for the Andrew Kopp, the Ben Sherratt, the Justin Holl contracts, he didn't give them 6 and 7 year deals that were being handed out this year, and he avoided doing that to other, as he put it, role players this offseason as well, because he recognized that to build a sustainably good team, you need contracts coming off the book every single year to improve your roster every single year. So yes, we're going to have Compher on the team until the 2028 offseason. You're going to have Kopp on the team until the 2027 offseason, and that's less than ideal, absolutely. But they're going to be coming off the books because they only got 5-year deals, 4-year deals, rather than 6 and 7 year deals. And that's a testament to Steve Yzerman. So while these guys are getting overpaid, the term isn't ridiculous, giving you every single offseason room to improve, which is important because 2 off seasons from now, next offseason, but the offseason after that, where you have $19 million coming off the books, you're going to have to re-sign Simon Edvinsson and Sebastian Cossa, assuming Cosa's at the NHL at that point. God, I hope he is, and having an impact. And those could be 2 RFAs that are going to be worth a lot of money. So when people complain about the cap situation the Red Wings are in, I don't see one. Yes, this season, you're going to be close to the cap. But who else do you need to sign? Who else do you need to bring in? Yes, a top 4 right side D-man would be great. And I've been banging the drum for that for a while. It's pretty clear, barring some big trade for Jacob Trouba, which doesn't seem like it's happening, or some big trade for Aaron Ekblad, which is a pipe dream to begin with, that's not going to happen, and that sucks. But this team is going to have the room to make those moves and get this team and this roster better every single year for at least the next 2 off seasons. I didn't do the math for the season after that because then a lot fewer contracts are on the books as well. But there's an opportunity here for the Detroit Red Wings to really make a difference on their roster every offseason, which is what Yzerman wanted.
For sure. And even the RFAs you mentioned aren't guaranteed to get bigger contracts. I mean, Edvinsson, you hope so, right? That would be beautiful if he was good enough to do that. But there's no guarantee that 2 years from now you are going to need to lock up Kosa long term. That's right. Very far from a guarantee, right? Edvinsson's the only one that you look at and you're like, okay, there's a pretty clear path where if he takes another step forward, you may want to start having that conversation and play that game. But that's a couple of years down the road, and B is the most likely one. It's not even, a guarantee. The rest of them, I mean, golly, man, I don't think anyone should be having the conversation of we need to start thinking about the money we're going to get Sebastian Kosa. That's a
right.
a ridiculous thing to even bring up this early. So yeah, man, they are more than fine. And I think it's a pretty sizable overreaction by some of the fan base. Just again, because for this season in a vacuum, what do you need money for? What are we getting in August exactly that is going to cost millions and millions of dollars to the cap? I would love to know.
Yeah. Scotty, in segment 3, let's talk a little bit about pitfalls to avoid, which I may have hinted at a little bit.
Let's talk a little bit
here in segment 2, but let's talk about it in segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings. Got to talk to you guys today about FanDuel. I love sports, and I love them so much I don't want them to stop, but we're in a little bit of a lull right now. You got no NHL hockey. Baseball's on hold until Friday, at least for the Tigers fans. College football doesn't start till August. NFL football doesn't start until September. I guess you got summer league games going on right now in the NBA, but outside that, there's nothing. So what do? Well, you go to FanDuel because they let you keep the sports going whenever you want. All you got to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. All right, Scotty. When addressing pitfalls to avoid, if you're Steve Yzerman, to make sure they don't end up in cap hell, what, in your opinion, do you think those things are?
I think, it's really easy to start off by looking at the current offseason, to be honest, because that was a big talking point when we were not very active, right? And you were very vocal about okay, but look at the contracts they're giving out. Are you really that upset that they're not giving out big money or a lot of years on some of these guys? So I think that when it comes to pitfalls, I mean, if you want to talk super general, just stick to your guns. Just keep not giving out long-term deals. I don't think it's really rocket science. And I think when we talk about, okay, why are the Red Wings not in a bad situation with their cap? It's because, right, cause and effect here, really groundbreaking stuff. It's because Steve Yzerman has not given out very many long-term deals so far since taking over. That is a direct correlation. So yeah, just keep doing that. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm not sure there's a new try this. The reason why we say they're not strapped for cap is because of what they've been doing.
Yes, absolutely. And obviously we're not happy with the Justin Holl contract. We're not happy with how Andrew Kopp, who has a role on this team, but is definitely overpaid for what that role became this last year at 5.75, something crazy high like that. So obviously you have to overpay in free agency, and he did, but he didn't overterm, if that makes sense. And that's, like you said, that's the one thing he's got to really continue to avoid, is giving even though I would have loved to have Matt Roy, a 7-year contract, or was it Montour also got a 7-year, Stevenson, like guys like that who are really, really good hockey players, but are going to be on your cap long after they've started to decline. And yes, to circle back to our beginning argument, right? The cap always increases. So by the second half of that contract, it might not look as bad, but those guys are still going to be there against the cap, and they won't be freed up. So I think that is the major pitfall to avoid. And I would even go as far as don't bridge Seider and Raymond. I mean, if they bridge it, right, we'll come on here and we'll be like, they're signed. Here are the positives of this, because there are positives to both. We believe there's more positives to a long-term, and I think that giving a mid-term contract, if they give a Quentin Byfield type contract, we just saw, same draft class, holy cow, as Lucas Raymond, a 5-year deal, which only eats, 1-2 UFA years. I think that would be a massive mistake. If you're going to give those guys a contract, it's got to either be a short bridge to maintain RFA rights, or long-term to eat up as many UFA years as possible, because going somewhere in the middle to eat up just 1 or 2 UFAs and open it up to the possibility that they could walk away on their own, which would massively hurt this team's long-term sustainability, would be a massive pitfall as well. But I mean, for the most part, I think that he's done a really nice job. Obviously, nothing has been perfect. You don't want Justin Hull to be paid $3.4 million to sit in the press box. You don't want to pay $5.75 to Andrew Kopp to sit as your third-line center. But those contracts, again, to his credit, are not going to be on this roster. They're still on the roster for too long, but it's short enough that every single year it's going to become off the books in some type of relief. So I think for the most part, I agree with you. Just keep doing what you're doing, maybe pay a little bit less, but that's free agency for you, right? Just the term responsibility that he has had has been impressive in my books.
Yeah, same. And again, that's why they find themselves in a nice situation as it stands right now, and that's why they have money set aside, plenty of money set aside for Raymond and Seider and whatnot. Again, I think it is wildly beneficial to eat as many UFA years as you possibly can muster in those two players.
Absolutely.
The rest will work itself out, and you will continue to be in a pretty good cap situation.
Yes, sir. Scotty, I think that really about does it to prevent us from, talking in circles. Yep. I guess the final nail in the coffin is the Red Wings will be pretty close to the cap this year, but they got everybody signed that they need to have signed for this year to be a competitive hockey team. And the next offseason, 18 mil comes off. The season after that, 19 mil comes off. And obviously there'll be extensions in there, I'm sure. But as it stands, with contracts coming off the books every single year, they have a rolling cap structure to build up this team and build the long-term sustainability. So no, they're not cap strapped. And that's the final word.
Agreed.
Scotty, final thoughts.
We ball.
We do ball. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow. Stay tuned for that. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.